Welcome back to another episode of Trending Fantasy. I'm John Bauer. Find me on X at the Bauer Club. I got Mitch Sorensen at Dino MC. Mitch, tonight we want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the Dynasty quarterback market and kind of talking about some trends that I was able to dig up here looking back over the last few years. So going back to 2022, I pulled a snapshot from March startup ADP in 22, 23, 24, and then certainly in 2025. And I wanted to kind of talk about very high level tidbits, if you will. And then I wanted your thoughts on it, kind of why behind all of it, and then maybe the types of quarterbacks that we see fall and rise out of specific ranges. Is it production, age, situation, the type of quarterback they are, incoming quarterback classes, whatever the case may be. When you look at March 2022, and every year, Mitch, we say quarterback, it's the stable position. You want the insulated value in the position. 10 of the top 24 quarterbacks, this is just 3 years ago, are still top 24 quarterbacks. That's a decent amount of change, but you don't really see it in the top six. So the top six quarterbacks in March 2022 versus 23, 24, and 25, there have only been 10 quarterbacks in those snapshots that have been top six quarterbacks. So very little turnover there. The only new additions after 2022 were Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, and Jaden Daniels. So again, you see very little movement there from quarterback 8 through 30. And there's going to be a lot of numbers here. If anybody's kind of looking for the raw data behind this, please reach out to me in the Discord community. More than happy to throw it over to you. But from quarterback 8 through 30, that's 23 quarterbacks in March of 22. Only 3 of them are top 24 quarterbacks today. That's not good. That's not good at all. So every year we see quarterbacks drop out of these positions. We see quarterbacks rise up the boards. We see newcomers come in. Do those numbers surprise you at all when you look at this?
Not really. If you just look at the NFL game in general, I think there's a lot of bad quarterback play in the NFL. And I think there's not a lot of extremely good coaching going on in college that are helping players get ready for the NFL. I mean, it's great for the college game, how quarterbacks don't even need to call their own plays. They look on the sideline. Everyone looks on the sideline 10 seconds later. They line up. They throw a screen pass. It's how the game is because it's so spread out. It makes sense. Good teams do. Good teams win. I'm not hating on the college game. I'm just saying as far as getting college players ready for the NFL, I think that's what hurts. And we don't have a lot of players in March of 2025 that, 3 years ago, Trevor Lawrence was a guy that we all loved. Not so much anymore. And he was, tank for Trevor. That was a huge thing. Tank for Tua was another thing. It's just, there's these college quarterbacks coming in. We have the draft class this year. I think Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders fit it so well. They don't have that huge rushing game that is going to prop them up. They're not going to fall back on that. And so what's going to happen is dynasty managers are getting a lot smarter. They know in order to stay in that top 12, you need to be an elite pocket passer, or you need the hype of Caleb Williams, or you need the rushing upside Lamar Jackson. If you don't have that, the odds of you ever staying in the top 12 to top 15 just isn't going to happen.
Some more interesting trends, and I think it kind of speaks to what you just said with the development of these quarterbacks. In 2022, 4 quarterbacks entered the league as top 20 quarterbacks, so incoming rookies. 2 increased in value, 2 decreased in value. 2023 to 2024, 4 quarterbacks entered the league as top 20 quarterbacks. All 4 increased in value. So you look at the guys that came in, looking at that list, it was CJ Stroud, the last year, it was Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Drake May, JJ McCarthy. All of them have actually risen in value. Now, one rookie quarterback entered the league as a top 20 quarterback this year, and it's Cam Ward. Sure, Shedeur Sanders, he's floating right there, so that could change depending on what we see come time the NFL draft. But I'm wondering if that might be an ongoing trend which helps stabilize those top 24 quarterbacks. In 2022, just a year out in 2023, 17 of the top 24 quarterbacks were still in the top 24. 2023 to 2024, 17 of the top 24 quarterbacks were still in the top 24. 2024 to this year, 20 are still in the top 24. So I'm wondering if you start to see that cycle of, hey, these quarterbacks are coming in and they're not displacing these other assets. We kind of get a little bit more insulated value. And if you remember, Mitch, we talked about it a year ago. It was the bridge quarterbacks. It was the veteran quarterbacks. And we were like, I'm willing to invest in players like Geno Smith because I don't know if there's going to be enough talent coming in that's going to overtake that type of player.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, Geno Smith's my most rostered quarterback at this point because he was so cheap last year. And I kept buying into him because I just kind of knew this draft class wasn't going to be that huge one that drops everyone down. The 26th draft class is looking close to the same. It's a little bit better, but not by a lot. And so we are going to see, I think we'll see a lot of movement between probably quarterback 8 and quarterback 15, just the same names bouncing back and forth there. But the top 8 guys aren't, I mean, barring a catastrophic injury, this is kind of one of the first years to where I'm saying like, hey, none of these guys are really going to fall out of the top 8. Caleb is probably the only one that I'd be a little bit hesitant on, but definitely in the top 6, those guys aren't moving anywhere.
And then one last thing before we kind of get into the, with the findings overall that I was looking at, there was something that stood out to me. We're going to get to that question here in a minute, but I looked at the top 24 quarterbacks each and every year and how many stayed in the top 24. And I already talked about that, but looking strictly at the top 12 over the last 3 years, it's every year, 3 of the top 12 dropped out of the top 15 from 22 to 23. 3 of the top 12 dropped out of the top 15 from 23 to 24. 2 of the top 12 dropped out of the top 15 from 2024 to 2025. So, Mitch, let me ask you, who drops out of the top 15 dynasty quarterbacks 1 year from now? Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, Bo Nix, Drake May, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love. Who are the most vulnerable based on what we've seen, what we know, and kind of looking at their profiles?
So, like I was saying, to stay in there, you need to be a running quarterback, or at least one that will run and is good at it, or you need to be an elite pocket passer in Joe Burrow, or you have to be the best quarterback in football, Patrick Mahomes. All the rest of these guys, they're there by kind of hype at this point. So I think Caleb, I just said that he's one that I'd worry about. I think his value is probably extremely safe just because the hype is going to be there. I think Justin Herbert is the guy to worry about a little bit. He did have 7 top 12 finishes this past year, but it's just that offense is going to always limit him. He's not going to go out and have that 40 touchdown passing season anymore. And he runs a little bit, but not enough to give you the upside. So I really think there's a strong chance that he's outside the top 15. And then Jordan Love is the other guy. Jordan Love, after week 6 last year, had 0 top 10 finishes.
Well, you could chalk it up to the injury, though.
Oh, without a doubt. But there's a lot of guys who are pocket passers who finished, who had top 10 weeks, and he didn't have any. And so if that injury limited him that much, he probably shouldn't have been on the field, and maybe that was the case. Maybe he shouldn't have been on the field. He's going to come back and be amazing. But you could say, you could always do the but for every single one of these guys. Caleb wasn't very good last year, but new coaching staff, Ben Johnson, they've done so much around him. Bo Nix, same thing. Drake May. I mean, Drake May is there purely based off hype. I love Drake May. There's not a whole bunch we saw last season that's going to be like, hey, this guy is going to finish as a top 12 dynasty quarterback next year. it's all hype at this point. So, but that's the thing. After you get past Patrick Mahomes, every one of these guys you could talk yourself out of or into. And I think it's just important to look at the dynasty landscape as a whole. Like Caleb is so safe because everybody loved him coming out. And everyone kind of loves Bo Nix now because they believe in the Sean Payton thing. CJ Stroud is a guy, though, to where we've seen what the Texans have done this offseason, to where I could easily see him being quarterback 20 more so than I could see him being quarterback 10 going into the 26 season.
So he was quarterback 3 when I looked at the March 24 snapshot. He's quarterback 11. If he has a repeat performance, I think he's one that is primed to slip out of the top 15. But again, is that saying go out and sell CJ Stroud? It's more of an observation than anything in the potential risk. And I think it's looking in general at the profiles. CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, they're not going to give you a lot of the rushing upside. You know, you've talked about this countless times with Tua. Mm-hmm. You know, 2022, he was quarterback 18 from a startup perspective. Then quarterback 15, now quarterback 17, now quarterback 24. That's where he is today. So I'm with you. I think it's CJ Stroud and Jordan Love based on the fact that we've seen them a few years. They're not going to give you the rushing upside. We saw both slip in startup value from 24 compared to 25. You're going to hate this question, and it's not in the show notes, but you know, I always throw a curveball. If you had to pick one of these guys, who would you be most willing to place a wager on them falling outside of the top 15 in startup ADP a year from now? And it's the
15
the
quarterbacks.
Yes. Okay. Not 15 picks overall. So I'm glad you clarified. Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Drake May.
Caleb Williams.
Okay.
Let me take that back. Drake May has a lot higher likelihood that he could drop out just if that offense isn't there. So let me back it up. I'm gonna say Drake May, then Caleb, then Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is extremely safe.
Okay. I'm not saying I necessarily disagree with you.
Yeah.
So look again, every year we see multiple quarterbacks, and it sounds very minuscule, and it doesn't sound like a huge drop going from top 12 to top 5 or outside the top 15. You know, if you're quarterback 16, 17 in startup ADP, but these trends, they tend to continue. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And what I mean by that, this is something I found very interesting. And again, it's only a 4-year snapshot, but over the last 4 years, no quarterback who was a top 12 dynasty quarterback in these March snapshots. Of course, there are value ebbs and flows, but there isn't one that was a top 12 dynasty quarterback, dropped out of the top 18, and has gone back to a top 12. So I'm looking at you, Anthony Richardson. I'm looking at you, Trevor Lawrence, Bryce Young, Dak Prescott. Those are the 4 quarterbacks that fit that bill. Out of those 4, how would you rank them in likelihood that they could return to top 12 dynasty quarterback according to startup ADP in March 26?
So we had Richardson, Dak. Who else?
Trevor Lawrence and Bryce Young.
And who can be back?
Yeah, rank them most likely to least likely.
I will go Trevor Lawrence, Young, Dak, Richardson.
I think that's fair.
So here's the thing we'll get into it probably with your next question. Here's the thing with Dak. We just saw he's turning into more of a pocket passer. Yes, he has running game, but he's turning it more pop. We saw Baker Mayfield go out and be quarterback 3 on the year, if I remember properly. Yeah, no, quarterback 4 on the year. And then Jared Goff were the same kind of quarterback. He was quarterback 8. And neither of these guys are breaking into the top 15. It's
Baker just cracked 15.
Oh, did you just get it? Yeah.
But Dak's going to be 32 years old, and I love Dak.
Yeah. These guys, they just don't have the value ceiling there anymore. They could go out and have the best year of their career, and they'll end up being quarterback 11 or 12. So like you just put them in a hat with a whole bunch of guys. You pick out a name. You're like, hey, that's the one I'm going to take this year.
But isn't that crazy to think? And again, it's a small window, but nobody that was top 12 that slipped out of the top 18 has gone back to top 12.
Yeah.
Like Baker Mayfield could probably be considered the closest, but that's certainly more than a 4-year look back. I found that very interesting. And that's why I mentioned earlier, like the trend typically continues. And then I plan on doing this for running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And for quarterback, I mentioned 10 quarterbacks in those March snapshots, again, going back to 2022, have been valued as a top 6 dynasty quarterback. So really, you have 6 in 22, 6 in 23, 6 in 24, 6 in 26. So there's 24 spots. They've always been the same 10 quarterbacks. For running backs, out of those 24 top 6 spots, there have been 19 different top 6 running backs. That is, and we know that though.
Yeah.
Like that is turn and burn. So really, and again, go over, you're already on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Check out Scott's war discussion on quarterbacks. And this is completely coincidental, but his war discussions, and whether it's our draft pick discussions, whether it's our positional discussions, it ties in very nicely together because he's talking about you want the highest of high-end quarterbacks, and well, there isn't much turnover there. And you mentioned that too, Mitch. But then once you get into the 13 to 24 range, going back to 2022, quarterbacks 13 through 24, a year later, 6 of them were out of the top 24. 2023 to 2024, 7 of those quarterback 13 to 24 dropped out of the top 24. It was only 3 this past year. But again, I think that could point to a bigger trend with the caliber of quarterbacks entering the league. So you said who? Lawrence, Bryce, Dak, and Richardson.
Yes. Yes.
What percent would you assign to Trevor Lawrence? I need an exact percent.
18. I just think it's a pretty low chance of any of these guys. The one who would rise the fastest is Richardson. If Richardson goes out and has a great 4-game sample, he's immediately going to go up. If these other guys have a good 4-game sample, they're hardly going to move at all. It's just, I think Richardson's floor is like basement level at this point, and the ceiling's still there. It's just he has to be able to put it together on the field.
Before we get to the last question, and again, if anybody just wants the raw data behind this, it's nothing fancy schmancy, but I think it's an interesting visual. I mentioned quarterback 8 through 30 in 2022. Listen to how bad this is. Quarterback 8, Deshaun Watson, Trey Lance, Russell Wilson. That's quarterback 10. Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts. Okay. Malik Willis, quarterback 15. Aaron Rodgers, Mac Jones, Tua, Zach Wilson, quarterback 19, Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral. And again, this is March, so it certainly would look a little bit different in May, but I wanted to include 2025. Ryan Tannehill, Tom Brady, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Davis Mills, Carson Wentz, Daniel Jones. That's a bad list.
It's really bad. Yeah.
Only Tua, Jalen Hurts, and Trevor Lawrence are top 24 quarterbacks when you look at startup ADP in March 25.
3 years ago.
Yeah, it's not like we're talking about a decade ago, but it might as well be in the dynasty landscape. So now, to go with, you said Jordan Love, I said let's throw CJ Stroud in there as guys that could potentially fall out of the top 15 dynasty quarterbacks and startups next year. And then you guaranteed Drake May would drop. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
That's exactly what happened. Yes.
So let's say 2 of those quarterbacks drop out of the top 15. Over the past 3 years, it's been 2, 3, and 3. Who takes their place? These are the next players. Kyler, Brock, Baker, Cam Ward, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Bryce Young, Shador Sanders, Tua, or is it going to be a 2026 rookie?
So the cop-out answer is I could go JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix, because those guys just need to play for the year and not be terrible, and their value's probably going to rise. That would be the cop-out. I am going to actually go with a guy who I think could end up being a top 10 guy after this, is Kyler. I'm not a Kyler guy, but
that surprised me.
He had a good 24 season. He has another year with his coaching staff, another year with Marvin, another year with Trey McBride. He has all the talent around him, and he's actually a guy who rushes enough. He doesn't rush as much as he used to when he was younger, but there's enough that upside there to everyone kind of buys into that. And so for me, but it's kind of hard because he's quarterback 16 instead of quarterback 15, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. He's the one that's right on the outside, but I think he can be a top 10 guy. Purdy, I don't think we're going to see it. Mayfield, we kind of already see him at his top. So it's like Cam Ward, McCarthy, Penix. It's just choosing those young guys. Which one's going to move up? One of them will.
But isn't it funny? Outside of Kyler,
mm-hmm.
not one rushing quarterback.
JJ McCarthy, rushing quarterback.
Okay.
Just wait.
I mean, he's capable, but yeah. Brock, Baker.
That's why these guys are where they are.
But and that's not to say these guys can't run.
No, but everyone knows that there's a difference between like rushing quarterbacks and guys who can run. All these guys are players in the NFL. There's like 4 of them that can't actually run. Bryce Young is out there running. I would not call him a rushing quarterback.
Right. I just wanted to clarify, but I think that kind of goes into what we mentioned. Why necessarily look to invest in some of these guys that are in that 13 to 24 range when you can go out and get production from a Matthew Stafford for a year or two, Geno Smith for a year or two, and the cost to acquire is minimal. And again, go listen to the War episode that Scott just put out. It ties in so nicely with this discussion. So I think the big takeaway, get to the tippy top, or maybe look to slide back and pick up extra value, or look cross positionally if that opportunity presents itself. And the quarterbacks, especially outside of the top 6, they're not as safe as we all think. Like you said, Mitch, you could look at the top 12 and be like, oh, like they're all going to be there still. Data says it's not going to be that way.
Yep. Top 6 is fine. Outside of that, we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, there's going to be some swings for sure. And if you can be on the right side of those bets whenever you're acquiring or trading these players away, that's where the profits happen. And that's where ultimately you start to win across your dynasty leagues. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Like I said, I want to dive into running back, wide receiver, and tight end over the next couple of episodes. And then I know we're going to have a ton of rookie discussions coming up on both our weekly episodes of Dynasty Theory and Trending Fantasy. And please, don't just hit the like button. Don't just hit subscribe to the channel, but let us know in the comments if there is a topic that you're thinking about that is more overarching. It's not specific to a player that you would like to hear about, because we'll dive into it. Mm-hmm. And it's a conversation we would love to have. So please let us know in the comments. For Mitch Sorensen, I'm John Bauer. We'll catch everybody next week. Peace.